All right. I think I am about ready on my end. Busy, Davey, all ready?
Sure.
Let's do it. Good afternoon, everybody who is tuning in live, and good afternoon, and wherever this might meet you, whenever you choose to tune into this video. We have a great discussion ahead of us today. My name is Adam Shimoni. I'm a council member here in Flagstaff, and I welcome you to this great discussion we're going to have with some colleagues of mine. We have Dave Wessel with us this evening. Good afternoon, good evening, Dave, who is the planning manager at MetroPlan. How are you, Dave?
I'm doing great, Adam. Thanks for having me tonight.
Absolutely. And then we have Elizabeth Busy Collins, who is a transit planner at Mountain Line. Busy, good to see you. How are you?
Excellent. Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had the honor and the privilege of working with both of you through my little short time here at the city. And it's really been an honor and a privilege to work with the whole team in the community who are working on all these great topics. But, Dave and I had a good conversation a while back, and we've wanted to go live with this conversation with you all, the public, and invite you in on this discussion and use my platform to try to get to more people. So Dave and I are going to be co-hosting this discussion, and Dave's really going to do the heavy lifting in terms of the presentation and facilitating a great discussion around stride forward and Metro's plans currently in the community. So maybe what we'll do really quick is, Dave, maybe introduce yourself really quick and talk a little bit about the work you do. And then Busy, I'd like for you to do the same. And then we'll go back to Dave and let Dave run with it.
Excellent. Thank you, Adam. So my name is David Wessel. I'm the planning manager for MetroPlan. MetroPlan has been around for about 26 years now. And when the city hit 50,000 people, we needed to form this organization called the Metropolitan Planning Organization in order to be eligible for and continue to receive federal transportation planning and construction dollars. So we formed this organization with the city of Flagstaff, Coconino County, and ADOT at the time. And in my presentation, I'll update you on the current membership. And one of the things we do is produce a regional transportation plan to help guide the investment of those federal dollars. But it also addresses local investments, particularly on major roads. And that's whether it's, for highways, for transit, for pedestrians or bicycles. So we've been at this for a long time. I've been here for 25 years, came on board just shortly after the MPO was formed. And we work very closely with a lot of partners, our members, in long-range land use planning. We talk about parks and recreation planning and get involved with the Flagstaff Urban Trail System. We were there at the beginning of NAPTA, now Mountain Line, helped get the funding established for that. So we've been around and contributing a lot to transportation here in the region.
That's great, Dave, and we really appreciate your expertise and work in the region. And through the lens of the city, we definitely lean on you all quite a bit. So we really appreciate your service to the city and to everything we're doing. Busy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Busy Collins. I'm transit planner for Mountain Line. Here at Mountain Line, we are an intergovernmental agency. So we are run by or overseen by 4 different governmental agencies here in the Valley, including City of Flagstaff, Coconino County, Coconino Community College, and Northern Arizona University. We do an assortment of things. You're probably most familiar with the big buses, big blue buses that are around town. That's definitely my purview, is the fixed route system, those big blue buses. However, we also have paratransit service for people who cannot functionally use the fixed route system. We also have a Vanpool program, and that is throughout the MetroPlan region, and that is really good for commuters who have similar origins and destinations, so start and end of your day. And we also just started a microtransit pilot, which is super exciting. So using our smaller vans to provide on-demand service to a coverage gap in our system along the Huntington industrial area. And we also expanded that to include the airport, which is really exciting. So anybody within the city limits can get a ride to or from the airport on this microtransit service. Those are, that's what we provide. So really excited to talk with you today about transit. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you, Busy. And again, thank you for being with us. Folks, we do want this to be an interactive discussion. So if you have comments, thoughts, questions as we're discussing, please do jump in the comment section. And without further ado, Dave, I'll pass it to you.
Okay, I'm going to attempt to share my screen and give what I hope is a short presentation. And Adam, you'll interrupt me if there's somebody who wants to add something. So we're going to go here and share my screen.
Awatef, welcome. Awatef writes, good evening. Is there any plans to make the bus stop safer? In a manner, they will be tucked in the side of the road so they don't obstruct the traffic. Busy, you want to address that really quick? Have any thoughts to share?
Yeah, great question. I definitely understand that when buses are stopping in lane at a bus stop, that it does stop traffic behind the bus. However, it is in the best interest of bus service and bus riders to have in-lane stops where appropriate. We absolutely have a warrant analysis of where we think pullouts should be, a bus pulling out of the lane of traffic to serve that bus stop. And, along, for example, Route 66, there's a lot of places where we have in-lane stops. And it's really challenging for the bus to get back into traffic at any locations that do have a pullout or where we serve in the right turn lane. So it's really just, in your car, you want to keep moving 100%. In the bus, we're under the same mentality. We want to keep moving as quickly as possible and maintain our schedules for reliability of the riding public.
That's great. Thank you for that. And thank you for joining us and chiming in. And Dave, there's your screen share.
Okay.
Maybe go into presentation. Yeah.
We're in presentation mode. Here we go. So here to talk to you about Stride Forward.
Dave, really quick, I'm so sorry. I think the presentation, because it popped up in a separate probably page, I can still see your I can see that page.
You can see the notes.
Yeah, okay. I'm not sure if I can see the notes, but
let me.
And worst case scenario, it's not the worst thing.
Okay. So do I need to reshare?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll try sharing my screen. And this time I'll try just doing the entire screen and see what happens.
Okay, there it is again. That's okay. We can just see the full screen.
All right. We'll just go this way. So here to present about Stride Forward, our next regional transportation plan. As I mentioned, as I'm trying to move down, what is going on here? There we go.
There it goes.
Little lag. So as I was discussing earlier, we have several members in this regional planning organization: the city, the county, Arizona Department of Transportation, Mountain Line. So welcome, Busy, and Northern Arizona University. And we share similar boundaries, or the same boundaries, with Mountain Line, which covers from Belmont to Winona and from Sunset Crater down to Kachina Village Mountain Air. And this is also the same area that the city and county use for the regional plan. What is Stride Forward? It's a 25-year transportation plan with goals, policies, and objectives that speak to land use and housing and economic development. It's also a program or list of projects that cover multiple modes that you can see listed there. So why do we do it? Here's a quote. I probably should have attributed this to somebody, but to provide sufficient accessibility for all through the regulation, operation, maintenance, and improvement of the transportation system. The question why it's important, because we have some big issues. Climate change, of course, is critical, and that's really playing front and center here on this particular regional transportation plan. We do these every 5 years, and the carbon neutrality plan adopted by the city was adopted since we adopted our last regional transportation plan. Housing affordability, there's 45% are cost burden, which means they pay more than 30% of their household income for rent. 57% of renters are cost burden. And then equity. You can't really see this, but this is a map showing where some of those accessibility challenged populations like minorities or low income, disabled, the elderly live around the region. And where those overlap, it's particularly important to have good mobility and be equitable in how we serve them. Why it's important, again, big dollars. Our regional transportation plans have been instrumental in the last two big transportation taxes. Back in 2000, was over $100 million raised in transportation sales taxes for several measures. It started Mountain Line Transit. It funded pedestrian bicycle improvements with a specific funding stream for the first time, and it built the 4th Street Railroad overpass, as well as a number of minor road projects. More recently, in November of 2018, another transportation sales tax, or actually an extension of that, essentially, raising over $200 million over the next 20 years. It'll build the Lone Tree Railroad overpass. It'll build several other roads. It'll fund more pedestrian and bicycle improvements. Unfortunately, there was a proposition for expanding transit that did not pass. It came very close. As I mentioned in my introduction, we're a federal beast. We exist to manage federal dollars, and that includes many of the grants that the city and Mountain Line would apply for. So what will we do through this process? We're going to provide clear costs and implications for the different investments that we consider. We really want to look at those relationships between community values like environment and economic development. And we want to integrate multiple plans. This is a bit difficult to see, but because we're in this mode, I can raise this up. There's Flagstaff in motion. Busy may refer to that later. It's a community transit plan. We'll speak to that in Stride Forward. The city is in public and comment period, and we'll be adopting soon the Active Transportation Master Plan. I mentioned the Carbon Neutrality Plan, and the city and county are kicking off their regional plan as well. So we're going to look to coordinate those as best we can in our regional transportation plan. And we want to have a robust public participation. So again, thank you, Adam, for contributing to that effort with the plan tonight. So when will we be done? Here we are in April. We've been hard at it since last June, collecting data. We've been out in front of the public with several surveys and stakeholder meetings. And right now we're developing our future forecasts, and that'll happen over the summer. And then we'll get into our final policy development. So we hope to be done by October, and with adoption by our board in December. So where does this fit into everything in the grand scheme of things? I've mentioned the regional plan. So here's kind of the large overview. And then there's these more particular plans. So parks has a plan, recreation, there's utilities plans. And here we are, the regional transportation plan. Mountain Line's 5-year plan would really fit into this level. And then you get into the implementation with like capital improvement plans, zoning codes, and other things. So we're at this mid-level of planning, and we help guide these investments, particularly in the capital realm. So how do we do it? We look at the big picture. We look at land uses and transportation. We even consider impacts to natural resources. Then we look at all these multimodal systems and how they influence the environment, housing, the economy, then look at the different means of serving those, whether it's transit, by roads, peds, or bikes. And then we get down into the details on particular modes. So that's kind of a quick overview of the process. So in our particular process, we're going to be looking at that future condition. We're projecting out to 2045, where we think there's, we and the state demographer's office think there's going to be about 120,000 people in the region. Again, that stretches from Belmont to Winona and Kachina Village to north of the Peaks. And we're going to have two concepts. One is called Onward, which is really staying the course with the existing transportation and land use plans. Voters approved those improvements for transportation in 2018. The current regional plan is still in effect. So we wanted to look at the impacts and effects of that type of development, land use for housing, land use for commercial and employment and institutional development, and how well those transportation services and facilities perform. And one of the performance metrics we're going to look at is vehicle miles of travel. So when, I travel from here to I'm downtown right now. If I travel from here to the mall, it's about 4 miles. That's 4 miles of vehicle miles traveled. So VMT, vehicle miles travel, is really our proxy for greenhouse gas emissions. And the carbon neutrality plan is looking for us to hold our VMT at 2019 levels, even as we grow. So we want to see how well our current plan does, and that's our Onward concept. We suspect that the current plan is not going to perform particularly well with VMT, but we want to know just how far from that carbon neutrality plan goal we are. And so we're going to have another concept that we're calling Upward, which is going to be much more ambitious. And it's going to explore land use. Can we change our land use patterns, move things closer together so that walking and biking are more easily available to people as a mode of transportation? Transit can service those types of developments better. Can we change our investment strategies to increase investments in walking and biking and transit? Can we institute programs to reduce demand for travel? So sometimes it might be an employer-based program where they provide the Eco Pass, for instance, that Mountain Line has available. So in the Onward scenario, a key point, again, is it is a federal regulation for us. We need to be fiscally constrained. So we're going to do our best to project out what type of revenues we think are reasonably available over this 2025 year period. In the Upward, we're taking those fetters off, and we're going to throw kind of everything in the kitchen sink to do our best to reach those carbon neutrality goals. And at the same time, in both these scenarios, we'll be analyzing effects on housing and equity. So some of the things that we'll be evaluating, this is a summary table from part of our literature review. It's available on our website. The different things that you can do to reduce vehicle miles of travel. So one of the best things you can do is transit-oriented development. And that's really, like I said, making things more dense, bringing things closer together, putting them in close proximity to transit services, high frequency, preferably with good access to them. Part and parcel with that is increasing density. Part of managing demand is managing the price, and parking is a big part of that. We already have parking in downtown and at NAU in terms of parking fees. There's things you could do there. Improving street connectivity, where you can just get from point A to point B a little more directly, will help. You'll see several of the things that Busy mentioned in her comments. There was the Vanpool, increasing bus frequency, bus pass subsidies. Vanpools are in here somewhere. But the effectiveness really starts to drop off pretty quick. And then you get down to things like bike share and scooter share, which have relatively low impact. The next few slides are just giving you a sampling, pardon the pun, of our surveys. And I just want to explain some of the information that we're getting and how we're going to use it. So we did a random sample survey, over 600 people between the city and the areas of the county. And we asked people, what did they value? And transportation was one of the lowest out of the things that you see here, including schools and beauty, scenic beauty and clean air. And part of that, we suspect, is that transportation is a means to an end, where many of these other things are really an end into themselves. So transportation is needed to support that, and that's part of the messaging we need to do. We asked people about the type of community they preferred. This was a national results from a national survey. We asked the same question, and we're about split between people who want smaller houses with, the ability to walk to goods and services versus larger houses, where nationally it was more than 60%. In our following surveys, we drilled down into those, and you'll see some examples there. Well, why did we do this? So that we can fashion particularly that upward scenario in a way that we think is compatible with people's interests and stated preferences, but then also as kind of an analytical tool as we present this back to decision makers. Here's what people said they like. Here's how it compares to what we're actually presenting in that upward scenario. We asked people about how they get around today, how they would prefer to get around 10 years from now. And you can see there's a fairly big shift out of cars from 77 to 57% into these other modes, with a big bump, fourfold for transit. And we understand this is aspirational. This is what people think they do, and maybe think what they should do. But it also gives us a good benchmark in terms of, are we close enough? Does this actually, when we do the final measurements on onward and upward, and we look at the mode share, are we reaching our carbon neutrality goals? And how do we compare to what people said they would be willing to do or would like to do? So again, part of our evaluation tools. We asked people how they used their cars, and this is just looking at they used it for grocery shopping, going to work and stuff. And this allows us to then, if we were looking to get people out of their cars, how do we meet their needs for all these various services? We asked people about their preferred mode and how they felt about it, or why they liked it. And for cars, you see strong for safety and necessity. We dug deeper into that. Bicycles, cost, environmental friendly, and health, and enjoyable. Same with walking. And you see kind of public transit kind of spans those two worlds. When we asked how the system was serving them, about 80% said it's serving them well or somewhat well. Troubling, there's 9% in that survey said it's not serving them at all. And so something to explore. Pretty balanced in terms of people's interest in where we should be investing. Roads top the list, but there's not a big gap between these 5 modes or 5 facilities, and that's sidewalks and urban trails, bike lanes, and bus. Because carbon neutrality is front and center to what we're trying to do here, we wanted to ask about climate change perspectives. And interestingly enough, about 75%, 3/4 of people say that it's happening, needs to be addressed. And that's 76% in the city and 63% still out in the county. Another 20% or so said it's happening, little can be done. So over 90% recognize climate change, with a large percentage of those saying we need to do something about it. So when we went online, we tried to dig into these. We not really expecting people to read these results, but just to, again, why are we asking them? How satisfied were they with the frequency of transit service? We asked about the proximity of transit service, the number of bike lanes and trails, and the number of sidewalks and trails. How well are we doing? What do we need to change? Are we changing in a way that we think is going to address these concerns? I mentioned we dug deeper into this question about communities and how we shape them. We said, ask people if they'd be willing to change, consider moving to a community like that, and 53% said yes. And then we started asking things about the quality or characteristics of those communities that would make them more or less likely to choose. Well, as we got to higher densities, people became much less likely to choose. So that's, as we shape these new land use patterns, this is something to pay attention to. But how can we mitigate those? Well, parks and transit are significant contributors to that mitigation that makes them more likely to choose. So things to keep in mind. We asked people if they'd be willing to switch modes. About 62% said yes, they would. And what are the things that really contribute to that? It might be bike lanes, having things closer together, having transit available, or just really getting them information about their personal and environmental health. We have cross tabulations for a number of groups: minority, low to moderate income, disabled, elderly. Those are all available on the website in the reports. We did get a chance for what would be considered a revealed preference because gas prices are up. What are you doing? Or have you changed your travel decisions? What are you doing? About half the people are not changing their travel decisions, and that tends to be true for gas. People are kind of tied to their travel patterns. But we see people are going out less, they're combining errands, they're working from home. So again, these are strategies that we might employ, and we have a sense of how well they might work. We also asked a trade-off question. This is one that we asked in Milton Road, the Milton Road corridor master plan. We asked it again. This was actually a future condition. In the future, it'll take 7 minutes to drive Milton Road. And we asked people if it would improve safety for pedestrians and bikes, how much longer would you be willing to take? And surprisingly, I think, almost 80% said that they would take more than a minute. And a third said they would take more than 3 minutes. So, there are people willing, it's like, yeah, we're still going to drive, but we're willing to make a sacrifice to see things better for other people. So I'm going to look at the time. I'm going to wrap things up here. People want to see more walking and biking. They like to see that. I'll say here's our website, MetroPlanFLG.org. There's lots of good information on there, but if you want to see more about the plan, go to Stride Forward, and we have information on the plan, how to get involved, and then the documents that we have up there. So some of those documents, I mentioned a literature review that covers those vehicle mile travel reduction strategies, talks about travel impacts of COVID and the Amazon effect, online shopping. We have socioeconomic data, and then we have the survey results. And we have reports for the random sample survey and online survey 1. But survey number 2, the summary is up there, but we don't have the report on that yet. Coming up in March, I should have updated this slide. We're going to be out in the public doing some events like Movies on the Square. First Friday, we'll be out collecting some data. We'll have another online survey coming out towards the end of May, and we'll be working on those onward and upward scenarios. So that's it for me. The future's coming fast. Look forward to having everybody involved and happy to answer questions. I'm going to stop sharing. Is that okay, Adam?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. That's great. Wonderful. Thank you, Dave, for that presentation. Gosh, that's so much good information in there. And before I start diving into my thoughts and comments, and folks, if you are tuning in and you want to ask a question, please do put it in the chat. but busy a lot of reference to, mountain line and transit. If transit was better, what that might mean, the percentage of people that are willing to, mode shift. What goes through your mind as you're hearing these slides, and what stands out to you?
Great question. So absolutely agree with all of the findings that Dave had. Working in transit, I definitely hear from the community that transit demand continues. People want to ride the bus. They want it closer to them. They want it more often. All of these things come at a cost, and we're currently maxed out on Mountain Line is currently maxed out on our available funding for services. And we are in the planning process right now of how do we best provide and fund Mountain Line services into the future, a 20-year plan. And we don't have outcomes of that plan yet. But absolutely, we hear that people want to go places, and, we want more mode options, including transit. And I couldn't agree more. That's definitely what I hear. And that's definitely what I'm trying to work on to best support the riding public and the Flagstaff area.
Yeah, absolutely. And from my perspective as a council member, I see the survey results. I see the cry by the public for better infrastructure, for better bike lanes, for better modes of options, and I also see Dave and I did a panel discussion a few months ago talking about all the historic planning documents that Dave was a part of for some of, and dating back to 1980. And as a policymaker, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Look at how ahead of the times our community was. But then the action wasn't there, and the follow through wasn't there. And we continue to prioritize the movement of vehicles, overall. And through the day, we are accommodating other modes now in a way that I'm very proud of. And as a huge step for the city of Flagstaff in the way we design. But it's very clear, and to everyone that who is prioritized is the individual car, and that's something that the city council is wrestling with. That's something that MetroPlan is wrestling with. That's something I think that all of us are wrestling with, and points to what Dave was saying about the upward plan, and it just gives me so much hope that if we connect these avenues and if we build it, they will come, they will ride the bus, they will take their bikes, they will slow down in a car, for the sake of the well-being of the pedestrian. We don't need to just hurry the movement of cars from A to B across town just because we want to. We can slow cars down to better the alternative options. And I'm kind of rambling, but these are all some of my takeaways from your presentation, Dave. And it's just empowering. I feel excited and empowered as a council member to take this information and run with it. But obviously, it takes an army, it takes a team, it takes all of us. And I'm just so grateful that the city and all of these team players are coming together. And Dave, I'd love to pass it back to you for any comments you have. And also, if you could also speak about the grant that the city got through MetroPlan to start, moving. I'll let you speak to it because I'm sure you can highlight some of its intentions better than I can. But go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Just to give a little context. So I mentioned we've been around here 25 years, and we really started at the same time that the city did its first regional plan with the county. And they're on a 10-year cycle. We're on a 5-year cycle. And so we've been, taking what they've developed and then moving a little bit forward, and they take what we've developed and we move it a little bit forward. And we've been moving towards multimodalism, cars, bikes, transit, pedestrians, and we've been moving towards activity centers. And this carbon neutrality plan is really just accelerating that evolution that we've been on. And one of the things that I think the cities realized through their sustainability department and in consultation with us is that we really need to get a handle on this vehicle miles of travel and how it affects, climate change. And when we started examining it, it's like, wow, we really don't have those metrics in place, the measures and the targets that'll really help us move towards not just carbon neutrality, but many other goals that we have set, including, trying to achieve mode shift from an equity across, transportation modes perspective. We just haven't been moving the needle. And I think part of it is because we don't know where we're trying to point that needle. We don't have a target. So this grant that you referenced, council member, is something that the city applied for, MetroPlan granted, and now we're working on it cooperatively, where we're going to use the regional transportation plan, the Stride Forward, to help us derive those targets. And it'll be things like, what is our goal for mode shift? In order to meet mode shift, what kind of street connectivity do we need? What's the quality of the bicycle environment that we have to have for people to be comfortable and feel safe riding? And what are those targets that we can set? And then the city, to my understanding, is going to follow up with that target setting exercise with amendments to a lot of their regulatory schemes. So it's like, oh, well, to get a comfortable bike facility, we need to build it like this. That's an engineering standard. To get street connectivity, we need to have so many intersections per mile. That would be in the subdivision code. And so that's kicking off next week with a workshop for planning and engineering staff from not just the city, but our member agencies. And then that'll last through the end of the year, kind of paralleling our work on the regional transportation plan.
I think that's so great, Dave. I'm so excited to see this leadership occurring amongst all the partners and with MetroPlan especially leading the charge here and supporting the city as we wrestle with this and work through these struggling times and our values and our priorities. It's definitely been a journey to get to this point, and again, I'm very grateful. And again, through the lens of a council member, we declared a climate emergency. We're definitely witnessing the impacts of climate change, and we're on a very strict and optimistic deadline, of 2030. And the transportation sector plays such a huge role. It's like, I feel real, fire, under myself in terms of getting something done and really moving it. Not just waiting for the data to come back to tell us, hey, yes, let's, work for more buses, let's set up for more best bus design. But, in my mind, I'm like, today, let's implement those buses. Let's figure out how to prioritize that. And obviously, Dave, I know you have all the money in the world. I'm just kidding. You obviously you don't have much in terms of your ability to
write that check right now.
Yeah, make it out to busy. Yeah, but what was I going to say? But your point about comfort level is really well taken in regards to the cyclists and what's it going to take for that site. Those are the questions we need to be asking. And when people ask me about the bike pilot that's on Butler, I tell them it's too narrow. It doesn't meet the mark, and also, that alone won't solve the issue. Like, it needs to be a completed network, right? If it's not, if we leave people in sketchy situations, it's still not going to work for the majority of potential riders. So creating that holistic network is definitely one of my bigger goals.
Well, it's also an integrated network as well. We're a small enough town that bikes actually compete with the transit service somewhat. That said, transit service is an extension of bicycle trips, and then it's really an extension of walking trips. And so one of the challenges that we have as a community in terms of our historic development patterns is that connectivity of the pedestrians system out to the arterials and collectors where the bus runs. And so many of our subdivisions are just kind of built like big cul-de-sacs. There's one way in, and that's for any mode, and it's proving to be a real challenge. And, Busy, I don't know if you want to speak to some of the work you guys are doing with the Flagstaff in Motion and speaking to some of those issues.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I completely agree. The road network is really critical in how we can better support all of these mode shifts. Circuitous, little tucked away neighborhoods are maybe lovely to live in, but it's really hard to get somewhere on foot or on bike or access transit that way. We definitely find a lot of challenges in areas such as McMillan Mesa. How do we better serve McMillan Mesa? The road network is just all wonky, and it's really hard to make a transit route that is efficient, that people want to ride, that actually goes where what makes sense for their travel patterns in that area. So yeah, grid network would be lovely in the transit world.
It would, and I think there's opportunities that we can pursue as a community, but we just need, again, some of the policies and even standards and targets to do that. One of the things that you see in places like Davis, California, where they have a huge bike mode share. It's flat. It's typically a grid, a little nicer weather, so they got a lot of things going for them. But they also really push connectivity. They'll take down a house in order to get a pedestrian bicycle connection through that's going to help serve an entire neighborhood. And if you look at some of our neighborhoods, that would really make a big difference. Not necessarily taking down a house, but being able to punch some of these connections through. And if it means creating an easement, on a property line between two houses, or if need be for the greater good, buying a house, making that purchase and putting in that connection. It seems like a small thing, but we need to do a lot of small things in order to meet these goals.
And Dave, we have this gentleman, Christopher, tuning in. Thank you for joining us, Christopher. Christopher writes, also riding the dedicated bike lanes through downtown, there needs to be more active cleaning of those lanes. All road debris will eventually be dumped on the bike lanes. The city should not wait for riders complaining about these lanes being cleaned. My thoughts. So, Christopher, I agree with you. Dave, if you could write us another check to up our maintenance, that'd be great. But in all seriousness, Christopher, you're right, and that's something I've been working on with maintenance at the city and street staff in my 3 years on council. And it's from my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Dave and Busy, if you know better than I do, but basically it's a priority thing. Sometimes it's like an equipment thing. So the bike lanes, we didn't have the correct equipment for the first couple storms we had, but they should be a lot better now. I rode Butler the other day, and I was really impressed with how clean they were. But but Christopher writes, get that check, David. But I think that, like I said, how we're wrestling with our priorities and values as a city, if we do show that bike and ped are our top priority over the personal vehicle, I bet you the maintenance will follow that same priority value set. So I'm really hoping, Christopher, that is happening soon, and that shift is happening soon, and we'll start really thinking about those alternatives. Dave, you had said something, and maybe Busy, I think you spoke to it maybe as well, in terms of how we get the mode shift that I wanted to circle back to. In terms of congestion, building our way out of it's going to be very difficult, right? We can build 20-lane avenues, and we'll likely just fill them right back up and just increase that congestion. But look at NAU, look at what NAU's done. It's so impressive. Dave, you spoke about it in terms of like cost and how cost can shift mode. Parking $7 a day at the airport, which I think it's $7 a day, might be $5, but basically implementing a cost to park at the airport while providing an alternative, I bet you that bus will fill up, if we're able to extend it past the pilot, right, Busy? And look at NAU. They charge an arm and a leg to park on campus. Do students bring their cars on campus? They do not. They are packing onto those buses, and that bus line is the most busy bus line for Mountain Line. And Busy, do you want to talk about that at all in terms of
Yeah.
any of that?
Absolutely, Adam, you're completely on target. Transportation demand management is kind of the jargon of exactly what you're talking about. What carrots and what sticks can we use to try to entice people to move to a different mode, to try walking, transit, biking. Parking fees is absolutely one of those stick measures. Better transit service is a carrot measure, putting more out there and enticing people in a positive way. So there's a variety of things that we could be doing, and absolutely, I see the partners in this community working towards some of those solutions, and I'm just really excited about that. Dave, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think it is kind of the supply and demand side, as you mentioned, Busy, and the supply needs to be quantity as well as quality, and as I've been looking at this, you think about a car driving down a road. You've got one person in a car surrounded by sheet metal, and then they've got there's about a 5-foot wide car in a 12-foot lane, so they got about 3 feet on either side of them. Outside of that, and then the next lane over, there's another 3 feet. Then the next sheet metal encased person, and then you get to the 4-foot sidewalk or 5-foot sidewalk right back of curb, where that one person has walking the sidewalk. Has little more than the room that the driver has between them and their car door to get next to, and they're right up against traffic. So there's, what are we providing in terms of the quality of the experience for, these different modes, as well as the quantity. And we know that for bicycling and pedestrian in particular, there's lots of gaps in the system. And many of those gaps are experiential, as I just mentioned, where it's like, okay, well, there's a shoulder, maybe there's a bike lane, but cars are going 40 miles an hour, and there's tens of thousands of them every day. So how can we shift things to be more equitable in terms of how we treat these different modes, and can we expect people to shift modes? That's the hope. I think we will see increased mobility, increased activity, and we'll see those mode shifts if we can better improve our land use distribution and mix.
Absolutely. And I'll give an update to you all and the public. The City Council had our budget retreat last Thursday and Friday, and we did allocate $550,000 to do design work of 6 different projects that would really help move the needle on what Dave was talking about, that connectivity. And those projects include the Riordan corridor for a bike path. And that's basically taking away that parking along Riordan and converting that into a cycle track is likely going to be the plan there.
So that would be Riordan Ranch Street?
Yes.
There on the east side of Milton? Okay.
Yes, exactly. And that's to create an alternative to Milton, at least for that stretch, that segment, right? Again, we're just trying to piece these things together, and it's difficult. Like you said, Dave, other towns that really prioritize the connectivity and the holisticness, they really go above and beyond, and we have some catching up to do. We definitely have some work. So this is a good step, because the design work is step one. The projects aren't funded, but the design work is a big step. And with a project like that, it's not much money. It's more political will and then paint, quite frankly, right?
Yeah.
And working it out with the different parties. Another project is Butler and San Francisco Street. That intersection, implementing a protected intersection there, along with that Butler and Beaver. Those are 2 of our more dangerous intersections where we have a lot of crash volume. And along with Milton, those are, and quite frankly, it's probably because of NAU and how many students are walking and riding their bikes, along with other populations in that region. But basically, those projects, we're doing design work along with the bike pilot phase 3, which might consist of elevating the bike lane up to the height of the sidewalk and putting in 10-foot foot trails on both sides of Butler. So just like on 66, how you have that 10-foot foots, it'll be like that on Butler, and that will allow folks to pass each other, that'll allow folks that comfort of not being in a 5.5 foot wide, avenue with dangers on both sides. And I think that'll really start really setting the tone moving forward as to how the city continues to build. And then the other project is 4th Street and the right sizing of 4th Street from 5 lanes to 3 lanes. And again, that's not necessarily a high cost project, but a more of a political will issue or situation. And my understanding, Dave, you probably know, and Busy, maybe you too, but Rick said that, Rick, our city engineer, was saying that there's been conversations plenty that have been had about that from 2014, that we can start with that at the council level. But those, and then the dream project, which is last on the list for a reason, because it's probably going to be the hardest lift of all, is right sizing of 66 and 4th Street and implementing a protected intersection there. I'm guessing that's going to be way past my time, so I'll just plant that seed. But a lot of these other projects, I like to think we can potentially get a move on sooner than later. So just to give the group an update in the public, very exciting stuff happening at the city.
Now, that is some very exciting stuff, and some of it's news to me. I guess that was just a recent council meeting. So, and I congratulate the council for moving forward on these. And I think I want to just kind of reflect a little bit on the conversations about the Lone Tree Overpass, and the city staff and their consultants are working really hard on these projects. And I think that the challenge is, the target has moved. They've been doing it right. The example between precision and accuracy is like you can be very precise washing a window, but you could be washing the window on the wrong building because you're just not being very accurate. We've changed buildings in terms of the carbon neutrality plan. And so I have a lot of trust and faith in the city staff to make that shift and then get back to being very precise and very good at what they do. And this grant that you mentioned, that we're calling it the Sustainable Transportation Toolbox, is part of an effort to equip staff and help them have the tools they need to pursue these new goals, frankly.
I love it. And I think it's great, they really need staff. We have great staff at the city. We really do. And we've got great partners across the city, and we're all working together on these things and working through these challenges. It's wonderful. And it's, like I said, such a great experience for me to be like a navigator and kind of help bring people together and try to work through things and also stir it up and create a lot of drama, right? I'm good at all the above, but no,
not you.
I'm too quiet, right? I don't speak up enough. But basically, I think staff needed the council to really give them that new, hey, we're going to start working on this new goal, like you said, Dave. And so I think that's all playing out as we speak, and that the help you're giving our staff in terms of equipping them with more tools is really going to be incredible for our success moving forward in doing a good job at this new goal. So that's wonderful. Busy, we did have a comment come up in the chat. I'm not sure if you saw that. Yeah. Christopher said that he noticed that on the Mountain Line page, there are problems with Route 4 and more. Is this due to a driver's shortage?
Yeah, Christopher, thanks for the question. We just had a couple changes implemented this week to address driver shortage. Our operations division has really been working overtime, filling in the gaps as best as they can. And then the tunnel fire was just the last straw, with so many more staff having to, address their home and their family that were being affected by the tunnel fire. So sadly, we did have to reduce service. It is temporary, but there's not quite a end date identified yet. So Route 4 is currently down to 40-minute service. It's usually at 20-minute service. And there is along the Route 4 corridor, Route 14, which is 30-minute service. So, if 40 minutes isn't quick enough for you, maybe cross the street and try Route 14. And then we did also reduce Route 10 from 4 buses down to 2 buses. So Route 10 does have 20-minute service with 2 buses. Definitely students are cramming on those buses and some people are getting left behind, but we absolutely needed to support our operations.
Yeah. So
And
Christopher,
busy.
get your application in. I'll put in a plug, CCC, there'll be an election coming up. I won't tell you how to vote, but they have a CDL program. So you can go to CCC, get your CDL, go to work for Mountain Line. They could use you.
It's a great place to work. It really is.
Great place to work.
Here, it's just the national trend. I mean, shortages in absolutely every field, and we're feeling it as well.
And as Christopher and others likely know, there's a great app that they can download. I think it's Flag Ride, right? FLG Ride.
So our new one is Transit app.
There you go. Transit app.
A white worm with a green background. Transit.
And that will allow you to watch the buses in real time and be able to track how to best navigate the buses that are in network. Dave, this next question's for you from Christopher. Do you see any new projections on road traffic now that the weather is warming up? And I'll say, I think more than the weather, Christopher, is the construction patterns in the region. But Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, with I-40 being under construction, I think we're seeing a lot more people use 66 in Butler to get across town. I think you're right on in terms of what's going on here. I think we haven't done the full analysis, but with COVID, a lot of people are getting out of the city and coming to Flagstaff. I think we're seeing that maintain. We've got some data we still need to analyze in terms of just activity in the forests surrounding the city. And so a lot of that traffic is going to come through the city, and I think we're going to see that maintained. And as far as the VMT is concerned, the vehicle miles of travel, how do you capture that? That's something that we'll be talking about throughout the regional transportation plan process.
And it's so interesting to me. I almost love that there's this construction occurring that's creating this congestion. It's almost like a taste of what we're heading towards, and it's a good warning to the community that, hey, we can build a 2-lane roundabout at Beulah University. We can build a 7-lane intersection at Butler and Lone Tree. But when the congestion's this bad, those little pieces don't really help a whole lot. Maybe that's something we can debate about, but it's like it reminds me of the roundabouts down in Sedona. They've got these wonderful 2-lane roundabouts that are made to move cars more efficiently, but when congestion gets to a breaking point where it's too much and it overwhelms the system, similar to stormwater running off of the museum flood. We can have these big pipes and all this diversion, but if it floods the system and overwhelms the system, it's a mess, right? And congestion's the same way. And that's why, Busy, your work, and Dave, your work, and all the things we're talking about in terms of mode shift are so important to alleviating congestion. Much more, I would argue, than adding another lane here, an additional lane there, another connection here. All those things help, but in the bigger picture, if we are just going to be overwhelmed by cars, I feel like the community does not want to build our way out of that with more lanes, because we will Phoenix flag, and we will still see a lot of congestion. But as we're starting to wrap up, I know I just dropped a lot out there, and I'm sure I've sparked a lot of thoughts, but as we do begin to wrap up, because we are up on the hour, Dave, I wanted to go back to you. If you wanted to, are there any specific questions that came up during the question period with the public that you really want to highlight while we have a couple more minutes?
Yeah, so yeah, they're big questions, but I think to just build off some of the things you just mentioned, there's questions that came up during the Lone Tree Overpass discussions and our outreach about this idea of induced demand. And the fact is that if there's more of something, you're tempted to consume more of it. And so when you widen a road, people just take more trips. Some people will shift But then other people will say, oh, there's a trip that's convenient for me to take now. Well, and that works on roads. That also works on pedestrian, bicycle, and transit facilities. If you increase frequency on transit, if you put a new route in, you're adding a mode that's not available before, and people are going to just take more trips on that, or a capacity, and they'll take more trips. And so one of the things that we want to look at is creating that capacity and that induced demand for modes other than cars. That'll have positive economic benefits. It'll have positive health benefits, quality of life in terms of social interactions and other things. As far as cars are concerned, we also got a lot of comments and questions. You're not going to forget about us, are you? And the short answer is no, but I think there's going to be maybe a different perspective. And in the analysis that we've done before, we have a pretty weak grid system, even at the arterial level. I mean, there was construction on Milton and it just backed up, 66. Where do you go? How do you get around that? We really don't have alternatives. And, whether it's, God forbid the next fire is in a place where we have to evacuate a lot of people. Yeah. How do we get people out of here? Especially when roads will congest very quickly because there isn't capacity. So some road development needs to happen from a network resiliency perspective. And those roads need to be kind of right sized. They need to be very comfortable for the other modes to use. So I think that takes us to the top of the hour, maybe a little beyond. So I'll stop there.
Dave, that's great. And I fully believe in everything you said and agree with you. Maybe we'll go around really quick and share any closing thoughts or comments. Again, I so appreciate both of your time this evening in this discussion, this really important and timely discussion as we continue to head in this new direction as a community and as a city. It's a very exciting time, and the bus service and MetroPlan and other partners play such a huge role. Busy, closing comments, words of wisdom, anything else you'd like to share? Go ahead.
Just want to piggyback on your comment, Adam, that we cannot build our way out of congestion. We need to integrate more mode options onto all of our corridors to really address congestion in a long-term way. Thanks.
That's great. I did want to throw this in there. I think about all the parents that drive their children to school, and wait in those lines, and they create that clog in the system. How can we create like that pilot that we're doing for the airport, or better support FUSD and their bus services? But it's all about that creative thinking and that creative approach and connecting the dots. And I'll stop rambling about this, but I there's so much room for growth and there's so much opportunity. It's exciting and it's overwhelming at the same time. But I think that by shifting people and their modes, again, you add capacity to the roadway, better supporting those drivers that do choose to drive. But I'll leave it at that. Dave, closing comments, words of wisdom, anything else you want to leave?
Hey, stay with us throughout the process. Go to metroplanflg.org/stride forward. And keep track of the progress we make over the next month. We really should start putting up some significant, I think the survey results are fairly significant. I think those are very interesting, but we'll start seeing some analysis of the different land use patterns and such. Really encourage people to go there to keep up. And we'll be putting out press releases and other things, but really want your input, really want to hear about it. Oh, and thank you, Christopher Peckham. Appreciate your sticking with us and asking such good questions.
And the check should be in the mail, Christopher. Dave just sent it out. But yeah, Christopher, thanks for joining us and being engaged in this conversation. We appreciate you and you tuning in. And again, Dave and Busy, thank you both for joining me and taking the time to communicate with the public through this platform. Have a great day, everybody. Stay in the loop, stay engaged. Check out MetroPlan's website, download the transit app, and definitely get on your bike this summer season. And bike month is coming up, May. So there's a lot of great activities. Definitely check out the website. I think it's through the Flagstaff Biking Organization's website. But great information about May and all the different rides and events that are occurring. But take care, everybody. Be safe out there. And thanks again for tuning in. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.